Ryan Ham here, and the subject of this video is right in the center. That is the Smith Wesson SD9VE for value enhanced. SD, I have no idea what that stands for. The styling on the SD looks a lot like an earlier gun that was put out by Smith & Wesson, and that gun was the Sigma. Really bad choice for a name, because Sigma, the three letters of it are SIG, and of course we all know that SIG is a different company, probably a better company, but I'll let you decide. Certainly producing the Sigma didn't do a whole lot to improve the reputation of Smith & Wesson, which at the time was pretty bad, because Smith & Wesson had sold out to the US government and was essentially trying to go after government contracts and police contracts at the expense of any kind of civilian sales. So their guns sucked. The Sigma, quite frankly, sucked. There are a lot of people out there who like them. I'm not one of them. I've never owned a Sigma, but I thought that I would try Smith & Wesson's 20th try to get the Sigma right, and that is the SD9VE. The reason I have a Glock and a HS2000, Springfield Armory XD, essentially before Springfield Armory bought it. The reason I have those out on the table is that I'm going to explain the inner workings of this gun and use those for comparison, because they're very similar. Well, the Sigma was almost a copy of the Glock, and they essentially made changes where they thought they needed to make it cheaper. They didn't make enough changes. Glock sued Smith & Wesson and forced them to change the design. The original SW9F and SW40F had to be changed, and they were changed numerous times. There's Fs, there's Gs, there's VEs, there's Cs, there's all kinds of silly different names for it. And then eventually they ditched the whole design, essentially, and incorporated a lot of the features into a gun called the SD9. And when the SD9 started competing with their M&P series, because it looked very similar, they cheapened the SD9 and made it a little less desirable, and thus we get the SD9 value enhanced. I guess that's Smith & Wesson's value enhanced, not necessarily the consumer's. I'm not saying I'm really down on this pistol, I just don't see the advantage over a Glock. So I'm going to clear all three pistols so that you can see that no internet bullets are going to strike you or me. Empty, empty. Them internet bullets are very dangerous. You gotta be careful. Empty. And there we go. So now that they've all been cleared, I have no ammunition in the area. I'll go ahead and close them all up. I am not very familiar with the XD. I don't much care for it myself. I bought one. I bought the HS2000, and I've had it for years, just kind of as comparison. I've never shot this one. I shot the .45 caliber version. The reason I don't like it much is because my hand doesn't reliably engage the grip safety for whatever reason, the grip I have. I'm not saying it's a bad design. The trigger's also very odd to get used to. Much like the Glock, but in a different way. This is more of a unique trigger design. So there we go. I'm going to take the magazines back out so that I can take these all down. So overall, all three of these guns are similar in size. The Glock 19 is actually slightly smaller in a few dimensions. Not by much, though. Height is where the difference is the most. The Smith & Wesson SD9VE has a 16-round magazine. The Glock has a 15-round magazine. Therein lies the difference in the height of the guns. Is that there's one additional round. Now, when you actually back the chambers up and try and get those aligned perfectly, you can see the barrel lengths are identical. The Smith & Wesson sticks back a little bit further, and that gives you more of a beaver tail, and it's frankly a very comfortable grip. Although Glock opted for a plastic-coated, metal-lined magazine. This is one of the original partial metal-lined magazines. Smith & Wesson decided they'd one-up Glock, and that's the the Sigma. This is very similar to the Sigma, except slightly shorter. I think they will interchange, though. I'm not sure about that. They decided they'd use an all-metal magazine. You see welded at the back. It's actually it seems like a good quality magazine. I kind of like the design on it. Retained in a standard way with a little retainer, and then the magazine floor plate will slide off. It's got this crazy long heel in the front. I don't know why they did that. Very similar to the Springfield Armory XD or the HS2000, which was the predecessor. Same gun again, just different branding in the United States. So there we have the magazines. The XD, the original XD9, HS2000, again same gun. We'll compare those as well, and as you can see, for those of you who know the XD, identical barrel length. The XD9 is essentially identical in size to oops, wrong mag again. Getting these confused. Identical in size to the SD, height-wise, almost identical. So what they did is Springfield Armory wanted a middle ground between the Glock 17 and Glock 19. They didn't want as many models. Really, the Glock 17 was a little bit too big, and I guess they thought the grip on the Glock 19 was a little bit too short, so they thought they'd go with just right. And it works. The grip on the Smith & Wesson is narrower, much like the XD. It's difficult to tell from the top shot here, but believe me, the grip actually feels a lot narrower. And as evidence, there's these little thumb indents here, and they make the grip feel a lot smaller because the ball of your trigger finger goes in there, and of your thumb goes in here. You got kind of a thumb rest thing going on. They've got a place for you to put your finger here. You know, styling's all pretty neat, and the gun feels slimmer. It points more like a Glock than say a 1911. It's got a more steeply raked grip frame than the 1911, if I remember correctly. I don't have a 1911 out, so can't tell you that. One thing that they did that I like on the SD is they finally added a standard Glock style rail. The original Sigma and all the copies up until the predecessor to this, which was the SD9, not the SD9VE, but the standard SD9, had the I'd call it asinine. I mean, it was a stupid idea. Everybody's making accessories for the Glock, and they had to make their own little proprietary style. It had grooves, but you couldn't slide anything on. You had to have a different clamping system, and it didn't make sense. I think they did it to be different. I think whoever was making the decisions were the same ones that were making the decisions to sell out to the U.S. government. Pissed a whole lot of people off. Hardly anybody has Smith & Wesson accessories even to this day. Heckler & Koch also did the same thing. They have a similar rail system up here that's closed at the front, so you have to clamp something around it. Stupid. Whoever was making these engineering and marketing decisions, I think they got fired because Smith & Wesson ended up getting bought out for chump change on the when they had devalued the company enough. A company that makes safety locks, trigger locks, came along and bought out Smith and Wesson. They had devalued the company so much and pissed off the customer base so much. It was kind of silly. It was sad to watch because Smith and Wesson was a decent company back in the 50s, maybe. It hasn't been quite since then. So I'm going to pause the video here, and I'm going to actually, screw it. I'll take them all down. The Smith & Wesson takes down like a Glock. Pull the trigger. Hope that you haven't just killed your neighbors, and slide the slide off. I'm going to run out of room here. So the Springfield Armory, same thing. Got to pull the trigger, although I think they've got that changed on newer ones where you don't have to pull the trigger. And the Glock again, dangerous, silly, but yeah, you got to pull the trigger. So when you look at these guns side by side, I'm going to compare the Glock first. They're both striker fired. They both have very similar features. And there's a reason, because Smith & Wesson copied the Glock, and they had to pay Glock royalties because it was an outright copy. They didn't even bother changing a whole lot of things. So you got your striker here, rear plate, the plunger here for the firing pin block safety, your blocks for your cam blocks for the barrels are the same. Real similar recoil spring. To this day, the gun, at least the upper, is very similar. Where they start to diverge a little bit is the, in my opinion, Smith & Wesson did it wrong. They've got a roll pan holding the extractor on in this model, whereas they've got a spring and a plunger going back here, so the extractor is retained in a more logical manner there. They've got the serrations on the front here. I don't press check my gun, so I don't see that as an advantage, but some people do. I try to remember whether or not my gun is loaded through my manual of arms rather than through actually manually checking it. Smith & Wesson does not have a loaded chamber indicator that's tactile. You have to look in that hole and hope you can see something. It's like, oh my goodness, there's brass in there. Hard to do in low light, impossible to do in low light. Whereas on the Glock, the newer Glocks, you can feel if the extractor is flush, it should be an empty chamber. Not always. If you have a 40 caliber Glock and you have a 9mm cartridge loaded in the chamber, you can't feel. You feel this and you say, oh, well, it's not loaded, and you pull the trigger and kill somebody. It can happen. I doubt it ever will, but it could happen. Making it idiot-proof would probably be a lot better. Silly things like these, loaded chamber indicators are, like I said, silly. If you don't know your gun is loaded, you're doing something wrong. If you have to check this and trust that it's going to work, you're doing something wrong. Much like a magazine safety, and thankfully none of these three pistols have a magazine safety. If you take the magazine out and you're stupid enough to think your gun is unloaded at that point, wow. It's the mechanical things on a gun that can fail should not make up for the things inside your head going on that tell you whether the gun is loaded or not. So let me get organized a little bit here. Let me lay things out a little better. The Springfield Armory is a bit of a what do you call it? A different design. Not a whole lot though. They're still striker fired. They have a striker cocked indicator that comes out the back, which is nice. If that striker is cocked, you can assume, and you can feel, you don't have to look at it, you can assume that the gun is loaded at that point. If the striker is down, it has to have either discharged the cartridge or something is very wrong with your gun that the striker is allowed to be down on an empty chamber. So That's an indication that something is wrong, that you've actually cocked the striker on the HS2000 or Springfield XD, and you could feel it. I don't believe they have a loaded chamber indicator. Oh yeah, they do, I'm sorry. See, there's my inexperience with the Springfield Armory. This one actually sticks up a good bit when there's a cartridge in the chamber, and you can tell, again, by feeling, and you can even look, if you could see over the sights, you can look and you can see that it's up. Doesn't always guarantee that if it's flush, there's nothing in the chamber, but it's better than nothing. So in terms of features, this was a bit ahead of its time. All the different functions of it are identical, though. So it's not really a big departure from Glock, but it was more of a departure, and enough of a departure. See the extractors inside there, there's nothing external on it. It was enough of a departure that the Glock, of course, wouldn't be able to sue Springfield Armory or HS Industries, as the case may be, in order to recover any damages, because they really didn't copy the Glock. Okay, let's look at lowers. Notice the HS2000, even before it was a Springfield Armory XD, had a dual captive recoil spring, all steel, solid, and it worked well. So you had the lower recoil in the Springfield Armory XD when Springfield Armory finally won the rights to import that gun. Okay, let's look at lowers. Now we've got the uppers. I know somebody's cringing that I did that. All right, so lowers, very similar. You've got the drawbar there that draws the striker back, and same thing on the Glock over here. Extractors that's ejector, I'm sorry, that's pinned to the fire control group of block back here. Big difference is that the slide rails ride inside the fire control group of block back here on the Smith & Wesson, whereas on the Glock they're molded into the frame. This I think is a better design in that respect. The locking block or unlocking block up here is virtually the same. Not a whole lot different between the two guns. There's only one pin holding the Smith & Wesson on, and there's two pins that hold the block in the Glock. And a virtually identical takedown lever here. All these identical things are the reason why Glock successfully sued Smith & Wesson, and they settled out of court, but Smith & Wesson really had to change their way of doing business. And the slide stop operates in the same manner. There are many differences. The trigger bar, of course, you've got the firing pin block, what do you call it? The tip of these disengage the firing pin block. This, I have no idea what its function is, but there's a slight difference in the operation, but very similar concept otherwise. Same thing if you look down inside the mag well, the magazine release is held in the same manner on the Glock. Sorry. You see the spring moving down there and the magazine release sliding sideways. And you're not going to notice anything different on this. Why? Because, well, they copied it. Direct copy. However, on the XD, it's different. It's the ambidextrous from the start, and it's whichever side you push in from. It just has a little flapper that pivots out of the way to let the magazine go. And very good, very simple design on that one. I think Ruger had a similar design on their pistols. HK also has a different design for releasing their mags that also engages from the front. Disassembly, if you saw, there's a lever here for disassembly. You still have to pull the trigger. I think the newer XDs are different on there. but the rear rails on the XD, or the HS2000 in this case, are plastic. There is no separate fire control group back here. You see, this is plastic, and all of the force is on this steel locking block slash slide rail slash multifunction everything. Solid. I like this design a lot better. I like the takedown design. I like the locking block design. I like the fact that the rails are a part of the locking block. This is a machined piece. I don't know if the Springfield Armory XDs are identical to it. The ejector is a machined piece. The sear here is also a machined piece. And yeah, it much better design in every way except for, and a lot of people criticize this, the grip safety, and that's just for me. Some people have no problem with it whatsoever. I tend to agree with them that you know, it's a decent design. I wish I didn't have webbed hands that didn't like to engage it. They basically try to engage it up here, and I have to push really hard or think about moving my grip down a little bit, in which case my point of aim is different, and yeah, all is lost at that point. So to sum it up, Springfield Armory with the XD started importing a gun that was already being imported by HS Industries. I Am a Metal. Intrak was the importer on this particular gun, again made in Croatia. A fairly early serial number. It's got the front slide serrations on it too. Earlier ones did not have either the front slide serrations or these ones that are down on the lower part of the slide. And I had one of those. I sold it recently at a gun show. Solidly built, well thought out, good design. I like the XD. There's some things I don't like about it, but overall I'm really glad that it was successful. Okay, and I am doing something wrong here. Yeah. Put that back together. Smith & Wesson. You really can't go wrong copying the Glock, but Smith & Wesson did. They made everything cheaper. The plastic is cheaper. They've chrome plated this locking block, which might seem like a good idea because it's smoother, but it was a cost-saving effort, and it really looks, doesn't match the finish of any of the stainless stuff. I mean, it looks yellow kind of, really cheesy. I mean, everything else in here is stainless. Why not make the slide release stainless? Why? Because it's carbon steel, and they could have made it carbon steel and left it in the, you know, in the same finish as everything else, but they didn't. Slightly different concept for the trigger safety on this than either of the XD or the Glock. They made a few changes here and there, but mostly for the sake of making it cheaper so that they could bring it to market cheaper. But, and now I'll say the but. If you look at the price on these, you can get into them cheap. And I mean cheap, like around, I won't tell you what I paid for this because I'm going to sell it to somebody at the gun show. You should be able to get into this for less than $300 out the door for a used one, and around $3 1/4, sometimes maybe up to $350 for a new one. If you can't afford the Glock, don't listen to anything I said before, but I was talking out my butt, because this, for the price, is significantly better of a deal than any of the other guns that I've showed you here. And it's reliable. It goes bang when you pull the trigger. Decent magazines. It's backed by Smith & Wesson, and for better or for worse, Smith & Wesson, I mean, they're responsive. Yeah, it looks kind of ugly, but it's a lot better than the old Sigmas. You know, it's a functional gun, there's no interchangeable back straps. There's no silly finger grooves, and on the Glock 19, they don't fit me anyways. It's got an extended magazine release already. The front side is steel. The rear one is plastic. So, kind of like a Glock, except with the steel front. I like that it's drift adjustable in the front as well, rather than having the screw that holds on the front side on the Glock. Yeah. Yeah, I would buy it if that was the only thing I could afford. I would not recommend it. I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say don't buy it. I would say buy it if this is what you can afford. Great. Don't try and make any modifications. Don't buy it thinking you're going to put a threaded barrel and a compensator and extended magazines on it. You buy this gun because you want a gun that works, that you can put on your nightstand and not worry about. You don't buy this to accessorize. If you're going to do that, get the M&P. Much better gun on all accounts. Also, a couple $100 more. So, yeah. And back to the Glock. There's a reason why Smith Wesson copied the Glock. Smith Wesson copied the Glock because the Glock is the best thing going. And it still is to this day. The best deal. I don't like the Gen 4s as much because I think that they had a good thing and they're trying to chase their competitors who were trying to chase them. It's like, a vicious circle. They added the interchangeable back straps. That's a nice thing because it makes your hand feel a little bit better if you've got oddball hands. They changed the texturing, and that's okay. I wish they would have gotten rid of the finger grooves. I don't see the point in having finger grooves when the competitors don't, and they get by just fine. I wish they'd get rid of this silly thing here. There's no need for it. This little nub here, but otherwise, I have no real criticism of the Glock. They're reliable. The magazines are a little fatter than they've got to be because they're coated in plastic, but then you don't have to worry about them too much. You just they're a little more rust resistant, but not too much. They'll still rust on the inside, even though they're supposed to be stainless steel. But the Glock goes bang every time you pull the trigger, and wow, what more can you ask for? Is a gun that goes bang when you pull the trigger. This one does it for around $450, $500. This one does it for about $350. So save your money and shoot it a little bit. You'll learn more. Set it on the nightstand. It still goes bang when you pull the trigger. It's backed by Smith & Wesson. The XD is a different kind of animal. I'll tell you, I would buy an XD if it worked for me, and I think I would like it just as much as the Glock. As for me, I'm a Glock man. The Glock 19 is my primary weapon now for pretty much everything all around. Although I do have a Glock 21 Gen 4 that I'm going to be probably using in the future as a house gun, a truck gun, that kind of thing. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this. Can anybody identify this? Anybody? I'll give you a sneak peek. You could freeze it if you'd like, but that's no, I'm not going to tell you. Put it down in the comments if you know what it is. This is Ryan Ham. I'd make long videos. Sorry, I try and explain the guns a lot. Sorry if I'm long-winded. I know a lot about these things, and sometimes I just want to tell everybody everything, and it doesn't always come out right. So I'm apologizing. But if this was helpful, please like the video. That helps me, and that helps other people that find it if they are of a like mind. Favorite it if you need some information out of it. Subscribe to my channel and you'll get more of these kind of videos. Share the video with friends, somebody you think might enjoy it. Comment on the video. That's enough for a plug. Go all akimbo style with 3. Here we go. Here we go. See if I can shoot 3 guns at the same time. Yeah. Turn them sideways. Goodbye.